Snow smothered the Wyoming wilderness like a living, breathing creature that night, swallowing sound and hope at the same time, and rancher Cole Maddox had spent the last hour forcing his half-frozen horse through the blizzard searching for the source of the faint cries he thought he'd heard near Pine Ridge. Most men would have turned back, no sane cowboy challenged a storm like this, but Cole had always been the sort who rode toward trouble instead of away from it, and when he finally found the overturned wagon lying half-buried in snow, his gut knew there were lives depending on him. He dismounted, shoved aside collapsed timber, and that's when he saw them, two young women, identical as mirrored light, shivering violently beneath ripped winter shawls, their dark hair crusted with frost, their lips nearly blue. They weren't from around here, their soft features, dark almond eyes, and delicate voices marked them as Chinese travelers, rare to see this deep in frontier country. Cole lifted them out one by one, carrying them over his shoulder to his horse, their bodies feather-light from exhaustion, and though they tried to speak, the wind tore their words away. He wrapped his coat around both sisters, mounted up, and pushed hard through the storm toward his remote log cabin, each second a race against death itself. When the cabin door slammed shut behind them and the fire burned bright enough to stain the walls gold, Cole finally saw how close they had been to losing their lives. Their dresses were soaked through, stiff with ice, and they trembled uncontrollably even though they pressed close to the fire. Asking no questions yet, Cole hung new logs onto the flames, then turned, saying in the steady voice of a man who'd survived many winters, "You two need to get out of those wet clothes or you'll freeze from the inside out." The twins looked at each other in confusion, each reading the other's expression like a perfect reflection. Slowly, the one who later introduced herself as Lien stepped forward, her voice fragile but sincere as she said, "In our village, when someone saves your life, you do not let them leave your side. You stay until they accept your gratitude." Her sister, Maylene, nodded, clutching the collar of her soaked dress. "We do not know your customs, but ours say we must show our respect properly." Cole blinked, taken off guard. He meant survival, nothing else. But the twins, exhausted, disoriented, and terrified of doing the wrong thing in a strange land, misunderstood his urgency. They both stepped closer, fingers trembling on the laces of their wet gowns, and Lien looked up with eyes so earnest it stopped Cole's breath. "Will you stay?" she asked softly, "if we undress?" Those words would have rattled any man, but for Cole they hit a place deeper than embarrassment, because he saw that beneath their fear was absolute sincerity. They thought they were honoring him. They thought that was what he had asked. And they thought he might walk away and leave them in the storm again. "No, no, don't do that," Cole said immediately, raising his hands. "I just meant you'll get hypothermia if you stay in wet clothes. I'll get you blankets, dry ones. That's all." The sisters froze, glancing at each other again, clearly mortified by the misunderstanding. Maylene's cheeks flushed with heat that had nothing to do with the fire. Cole grabbed the thick wool blankets from his cedar chest and handed them over. "Wrap yourselves in these. I'll step outside for a moment so you can change." But Lien reached forward, not touching him, just trying to stop him from leaving, her eyes desperate. "Please, do not leave us alone. The storm, the dark, we cannot." Cole understood then, the fear of death still clung to them like a second skin. So he pulled his chair to the far side of the room, turned his back to them, and said, "I'll stay right here. I won't look. And you'll be safe. I promise." Behind him he heard the wet fabric peel away, the shuffles, the nervous whispers between sisters reassuring each other, the rustle of wool blankets pulled around shoulders. When they finally said, "We are ready," Cole turned back around. The twins sat close to each other near the fire, wrapped like fragile ghosts in wool, their eyes finally showing warmth instead of terror. Cole poured them hot herbal broth, and as they drank, color slowly returned to their faces. Only then did the story spill out, haltingly at first, then with a desperate flood. They were traveling west to meet their father, who had come ahead to find work in the mining towns. The wagon that carried them overturned when the horses panicked in the storm. The driver had run for help and never returned. They had sheltered beneath the wreckage for hours, praying for rescue as the cold gnawed at them. Cole listened silently, jaw clenched, anger simmering, not at them, but at the world that abandoned two young women to a storm without mercy. When Maylene finished, she bowed her head. "If you had not found us, we would be buried under the snow now." Lien nodded, tears streaking down her cheeks. "We owe you a life debt. Whatever you ask, we must do." Cole sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose, overwhelmed by the weight of responsibility he never asked for but somehow always found. "All I ask," he said gently, is that you stay warm, stay safe, and get some rest. That night, as the fire crackled and the storm screamed outside, the twins finally slept, leaning on each other, wrapped in blankets, breathing softly. Cole didn't sleep at all. He sat in his rocking chair, boots planted firm on the wooden floor, watching the door and window like a sentinel guarding sacred ground. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring: danger, questions, or maybe trouble from whoever abandoned them, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty: those two sisters had entered his life like a snowstorm, sudden and fierce, and nothing in the world would make him turn them away now. Morning came slow and pale in the Wyoming wilderness, the kind of morning where the cold still ruled but the storm had lost its rage, leaving behind a world buried beneath silent, untouched snow. Inside the cabin, the fire had burned down to glowing coals, and rancher Cole Maddox sat where he had been all night, still in his chair, still watching over the identical Chinese twins sleeping by the hearth, still guarding them like a man who had accepted a responsibility he didn't fully understand yet. When Lien stirred first, blinking up at him through the soft haze of waking, Cole didn't move. He just offered her a small, tired smile. Maylene woke moments later, startled for half a second until she saw her sister safe beside her. They wrapped the blankets tighter around themselves as they sat up, and in the fragile quiet of dawn, Lien whispered, "You stayed, all night." Cole nodded. "I told you I would. I don't break my word." The twins exchanged a look, one of those silent conversations identical siblings could have without speaking, and something warm flickered in their eyes, something safer, something trusting. Cole cooked breakfast, simple eggs and leftover biscuits, and as they ate, they told him more of their journey west, more of their father's letters, more of the dream that had brought them across oceans and mountains to a land that didn't always welcome strangers. Their father, they said, had found honest work in a mining camp but had been unable to leave long enough to guide them himself. His last letter begged them to be careful, warned that bandits had been roaming the roads, and asked them to stay with the wagon driver at all times. "But he left us," Maylene murmured, staring into her cup. "He promised to bring help, and he left us." Cole leaned forward, his voice low. "Men who run from their duty aren't worth your fear. And not worth your tears." The twins looked up at him then, something shifting inside them, the shock and panic of last night replaced by a growing respect for the man who had risked his life in a blizzard for two strangers. But the peace was short-lived. Tracks in the snow outside told a story of their own, hoof prints, not Cole's, not fresh from the storm, but from the night before. 3 horses. Headed north. Cole's gut tightened. Whoever abandoned the wagon hadn't been alone. And there was a good chance they'd return to cover their tracks, or silence the witnesses. He told the twins to stay inside and stepped out onto the porch, the snow crunching under his boots, his breath fogging the air. Cole scanned the horizon with a soldier's instincts. Trouble wasn't here yet, but it would be. He returned inside, closing the door behind him, and said firmly, "You two can't stay here long. If whoever left you in that storm comes back, I won't risk your lives." Lien swallowed hard. "Then we must leave soon." "But, will you take us? We do not know this land." Maylene added quietly, "Our father is somewhere out there. We just need to reach him." Cole hesitated. Escorting 2 young women across the frontier wasn't simple. People could misunderstand, outlaws could target them, the journey was dangerous. But when he looked at them, 2 survivors who had faced death with courage they didn't even know they possessed, he couldn't bring himself to refuse. "I'll take you," he said. "But we leave soon. Before the wrong men find their way back here." Gratitude lit their faces like sunrise, and Lien bowed her head. "Then we owe you even more than before." Cole shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. Staying alive isn't a debt, it's your right." But the twins didn't see it that way. In their culture, a life saved was a bond forged, and to them, Cole Maddox wasn't just a rescuer, he was now a guardian, someone fate had placed between them and the world's cruelty. They prepared quickly, dressing in the dry clothes Cole offered, simple wool, rugged but warm. When they stepped outside, the world was painfully bright with morning light reflecting off the snow, and the cold stabbed at exposed skin like needles. Cole saddled his horse, then fashioned a small sled from spare boards so the sisters could sit while the horse pulled them through deep drifts. "Stay close, keep your heads low, and if I tell you to hide, you do it fast," he instructed. The twins nodded without hesitation. Hours later, as they traveled through narrow mountain passes and silent valleys sculpted by ice, Maylene finally asked the question that had sat in both sisters' chests since dawn. "Cole, last night, when we said those words, when we asked if you would stay if we undressed," she trailed off, embarrassed. Lien continued softly, "We thought that was the custom. In our home, we show respect differently. We feared you would leave if we did not show gratitude." Cole exhaled slowly, then said gently, "Where you come from, your customs keep families together. Out here, in the West, what matters most is survival and respect. And you showed both. You don't have to offer anything to be worth protecting." The twins exchanged a quiet, emotional look, relief and admiration mingling in their eyes. They traveled until the sky began to dim again, and just when Cole slowed the horse to rest, he spotted movement near the ridge, 3 riders, dark silhouettes against the snow. The same men who abandoned the wagon. And now they were hunting. Down. Cole hissed, helping the twins slide behind a fallen log as he pulled out his rifle. The riders approached cautiously, scanning the wilderness, talking in low voices. Cole recognized the wagon driver among them, the coward who had run. The others looked worse, armed, rough, the kind of men who saw 2 foreign girls as cargo, not human beings. Cole's jaw clenched. He waited until they were almost past the ridge, then deliberately snapped a branch under his boot. The riders turned sharply, and Cole stepped out, rifle raised. "Looking for someone?" The men cursed, recognizing him. The driver stammered, Those girls, where are they?" "Safe," Cole said coldly, "which is more than they ever were with you." One outlaw reached for his gun. Cole fired first, blasting his hat clean off and sending him scrambling behind a tree. The riders scattered, firing wildly. Bullets shattered snow around Cole's boots, but he held his ground, firing clean, precise shots that forced the outlaws to retreat down the mountain. When the last echo faded, Cole lowered his rifle, breath heavy in the freezing air. The twins rushed to him, relief flooding their faces, gratitude trembling in their voices. "You protected us again," Lien whispered. "You saved our lives, twice." Maylene added, her voice thick with emotion, "How can we ever repay you?" Cole looked at them, snow swirling softly around all 3 of them, and said with quiet strength, "You don't repay kindness. You pass it on. That's how the West survives." By dusk, they reached the mining town, and when the twins finally reunited with their father, the man fell to his knees, shaking with gratitude, tears carving warm lines down his cold cheeks as he thanked Cole again and again. The twins looked at Cole one last time, bowing deeply, and Lien said, "We will never forget your name." Maylene added, "And if fate allows, we hope to meet again." Cole tipped his hat with the faintest smile. "Stay safe. Stay together. And remember, your lives are worth fighting for." As Cole rode away into the twilight, the twins watched him until he disappeared into the snowy horizon, knowing their story, their survival, would forever be tied to the rancher who never walked away when others had. And for everyone watching this story today, remember, your support brings more powerful stories to life. So hit subscribe, like the video, and share this tale with someone who loves emotional Western adventures.